think that Obama had no knowledge of the FBI launching an investigation into the Trump campaign?
He obviously
really
had knowledge of the investigation. The investigation was appropriate.
Okay. Well, maybe Nixon's people thought the investigation was appropriate.
So, John, I'm going to ask you. So, let's say that you have a friendly government. Their diplomat comes to you and says, hey, this person associated with this campaign is talking about coordinating leaks with the Russian government about an opposition candidate. Do you think the FBI should investigate that?
I don't.
Quite frankly, you need to subscribe to Rinnycast.
Dude, fucking.
John, you know she broke a window to get in, right?
Who knows?
Dude,
breaking a window to get into the congressional chamber? Who knows why she was doing that? It's a grand mystery. Who knows?
John, it's clear when she broke the window that she has a propensity to violence. Therefore, it's totally justified under your worldview, is it right?
Look, hey,
am I right?
Jay,
No,
J6 was odd there, dipshit.
Huh?
J6 was what?
Odd. That's all I can say on TikTok.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God. Wait. All you can say on TikTok. Do you want to have a debate on Discord? I'll debate you on anything January 6th if you do it on Discord, all right? I will do it. We could get around TikTok TOS, big dog.
Oh, sure. I don't have a Discord account, but I'll debate you on that, sure. Okay, so we're talking kind of November 2020 presidential election, January 6th. Is that right?
That's my impression.
Okay. All right. Yeah, this is all my personal opinion. Okay, so it's nice so we can kind of say whatever on here. We're not like bound by language restraints or anything.
Try not to say the N-word.
I can handle that. All right, so I guess I would say a few things about the election. First of which would be that there were supposedly about 5 million more votes than there were in 2016 or 2024. Are we in agreement on that or no?
The specific number I'm not certain of, but there was definitely a way bigger spike in like voter turnout for sure.
Okay. All right. So we basically are in agreement. All right. Do you find that odd in any way?
Considering the context of the election, no, not really.
Okay. And also, too, I think I had mentioned it last night that would you agree with me that the 1960 election? This is just to give historical precedent, right? The 1960 election with Nixon and Kennedy was very suspect, was rigged in Kennedy's favor. Do you disagree?
I've never seen any indication of that. Okay,
so I mean, I would point to two specific states. I would say Texas and Illinois. That in Illinois, specifically Chicago, was Mayor Daley at the time, right? And it was, I was actually just looking at an article on this. If you'd like me to pull it up for you, that there was a significant voter fraud in Chicago, where it was alleged that, and I believe it's to be true, that there was fraud involving dead people voting. So you just never heard of it, or you're just not familiar?
I haven't looked into the 1960 election all that much. If you send me something to read, I can look into it, or if you give me a second to read now, I can read into it for a second.
Yeah, go ahead. Sure.
I don't know how much time you got, buddy.
Oh, I was going to say, you want to go about an hour and a half?
If we go about an hour and a half, hour and a half, I don't want to do a bunch of on-the-spot reading about 1960. But yeah, it works for me if it works for you. Sure. If you just want to send me an article, I can read about it after.
That's fine. We can do that. Yeah. Well, here, how about this one? I think the 2000 election with Gore and Bush was pretty suspect too. Do you agree on that one?
Same case. Haven't seen any indication of it.
Haven't seen it? Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. Okay. So I guess this would be one of my primary reasons for saying that the election was rigged. Are you familiar with the 51 intelligence professionals, the letter that came out about 2 weeks before the election?
What, the Hunter Biden
saying
stuff?
Hunter's laptop was Russian disinformation. That was complete BS, and they knew that.
What's the indication that they knew that it was BS?
Oh man, it was Well, this is, I mean, we saw something. We basically, well, here, I won't pivot off. I'll get to that in a minute. But they they were just making it up. It's a pretty standard playbook that any malfeasance or impropriety on the part of the Democratic Party, I would point you to the hacking of the DNC or Hillary losing the election, for example, is just blamed on Russia. That's what they do.
Well, I mean, so
That,
for example, right, like we could agree that the Hunter Biden laptop story like almost defies congruity. It's very unbelievable, like on its face, right? Like the idea that this blind laptop repairman somehow got hold of all of Hunter Biden's hard drives, and then Rudy Giuliani got copies of it and was refusing to share any of the source material with anybody. Like the FBI probably, or ex-FBI people, I don't even know if they had direct information in regard to the case, but they have probably pretty good reason to think that that story sounds like bullshit, right?
well, I just why point to Russia? I mean, it was obviously done. I believe that the intelligence people knew perfectly well that it was real, and they were just trying to help Biden get elected in 2020. Do you think that's not the case?
I
Anthony
don't think there's any
Blinken.
evidence of
Go
it,
ahead.
right? So like I think that there is reasonable doubt to that story. I mean, not anymore. I think that everything has been more or less vindicated in terms of the Hunter Biden laptop. But at the time, there was a very, very much reasonable doubt for a person to look at that story about the blind laptop repair person and Rudy Giuliani refusing to share any of the source material. I think when you're looking at like law enforcement officers coming out and saying that that story smells like bullshit, I think that's a very fair assessment. I haven't seen any indication that that determination was in any sense political. And the reason that I would guess the reason that it's probably blamed on Russia is because of the interference campaign in 2016 by Russia, which not even I don't even know
Well,
if I don't know even know if Donald Trump denies that there was interference in the 2016 election by Russia, right? It's just a question of who it was favoring, right?
well, I mean, in 2016, we heard this. I mean, Mueller didn't find much, right? I mean,
Absolutely. No, he did. He absolutely did.
well, it wasn't what they made it out to be. I mean, they were trying to port. And when I say they, I'm talking about the Democrats, and they were trying to portray Trump as like a Russian asset,
Sure, but in
right?
terms of like the 2016, like Russian interference in the 2016 election, that was 1,000,000% justified, right? That we know that Russia was taking part in disinformation campaigns. We know that that Russia was engaged in like hacking campaigns. We know that Russia was trying to interfere with the 2016 election. There's a little bit of controversy over who it was, who the Russian state aimed to support, but I don't know if there's any sort of disagreement in regard to Russia trying to interfere with the 2016 election period, right?
Well, they took out some Facebook ads, man. It was pretty. There's been election interference with
Well,
us and the Russians going back about 100 years, man. I mean, this is pretty.
sure, but
It's
if we see Russia ramping up all of the disinformation and it wasn't just like Facebook ads, right? Like they were literally organizing domestic protests in the United States. They were controlling like 100,000 follower like Twitter accounts that were sharing information, right? So these were pretty big influence campaigns. If Russia is ramping up their campaign to interfere in our election, and we just so happen to hear the story about Hunter Biden dropping his laptop off to some blind laptop repairs person to prove a bunch of like Ukrainian corruption. It does. I feel like it's very. I feel like it's plausible that somebody believed that that was Russian collusion, right? Or that was or not Russian collusion, some sort of like Russian interference. No, is that like plausible?
like I said, it's all my personal opinion, like I said, man. But even in 1984, like Ted Kennedy actually reached out to the Soviets to try and defeat Reagan. I mean, you're aware of that, aren't you? I mean, it's just this is what I'm talking
I just
about
don't
with
know if
the
it's relevant, right? Like I'm just talking about the specific mind state of these FBI people. If Russia is ramping up interference campaigns in 2016, they have reason to believe that Russia is trying to interfere with the U.S. elections process. And there's a completely unbelievable story that will just so happen to paint the Ukrainian government in a really negative light. It doesn't shock me that FBI agents, who I don't even know had direct information in regard to the case, looks at that story, says, "Hey, this sounds like bullshit." And if there was one entity to be doing it, it'd probably be Russia, right? Do you at least think that like that is that is reasonable to believe at the time.
I think the Russian involvement was very minimal.
Well, no. I'm
Very
saying, do you think it's reasonable for those FBI agents to believe that at the time?
In 2020?
In 26, leading up
Or
to 2020, sure. Yeah, leading up to 2020, sure.
Are you talking about like with Biden and Hunter, or are you talking about
In terms of the Hunter Biden laptop thing, it's reasonable to believe for those agents that this story sounds like bullshit. It's completely unbelievable. Rudy Giuliani is refusing to share any of the information. Russia has been interfering with our elections, right? Like, is that not, are all of those things not true about the situation in 2020?
I truly believe that the intelligence people, these 51 people related to the intelligence community, one of the main persons on it was Anthony Blinken, who became Biden's Secretary of State. You're aware of that, aren't you?
Mm-hmm.
So no, I think they knew it was complete bullshit, that it was Russian disinformation.
Okay, well, I gave you my plausible. I feel like that was a plausible counter explanation. So I feel like we would need some level of evidence to where you show that there was like a knowing cover up or a knowing lie by these FBI agents. Do you have any indication of that?
Yeah, let me pull it up here. Let me just 1 sec. I'll pull it up right now.
Okay.
And if I remember right, the story was like they tried to suppress it on one of the social media platforms. I think it was Twitter, I think.
Yeah, Twitter was taking it down because there was some rule that they had against publishing or like linking off to hacked or leaked material. So the I think it was the New York Post story was taken down for a day.
Okay, yeah, I'm getting it here. Spies who lie. 51 intelligence experts refuse to apologize for. This is a New York Post article from March 18th of 2022. If you don't like that, I can find something else.
So we have the chat in Discord. Can you link the article?
Yeah, here, let me, just a second. Yeah, I'm actually looking it up on another tablet, but I'll just type it in here for you. I'll give you the date and everything. So, what is it? Is this little message thing in the bottom of the screen?
Mm-hmm.
Familiar with this? I'm sorry. Let's see here.
Also, just so you know, there's not the same concern with TikTok where like if you leave the app, it's you're gonna just keep talking. It works like a phone.
Oh, there isn't. I can just get out and come back.
Yep, and I can hear you the whole
here,
time.
I'll do that. 1 sec here. Can you still hear me?
Yep. Loud and clear.
Okay. Oh, cool. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I do like TikTok, but like saying all these weird words is kind of Orwellian.
I fucking hate TikTok. Yeah, you gotta do what you gotta do.
Yeah, it's all right. I'll pull this up and I'll. Just getting it now.
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of your buddies are on here too. I think I've got a couple of the conservative TikTok people added on here.
Ah. Okay, I'm getting it now. Okay. There we go. Got it?
Got it.
Okay. I'm gonna read it too here just to see. I'd read this before, but I'll just go over it again.
God, I hate these ads.
Has the earmarks of a Russian information operation.
I think that's defensible. Yeah.
Well, I mean, this is saying that this is saying that they knew, right?
No.
Let me read this thing here.
What, the article
They
or
are
that quote?
supposed. Yeah, the article, not the quote. Yeah, the article. Yeah.
Okay, I'm sure the article's
They are
main argument is that they do, but I'm not just going to trust the New York Post on it, right?
Okay. Well, that's why I said I figure you would. Well, see, man, I mean, this is honestly, and I'm not. This is not in any way. I'm just talking in general. This is not a criticism of you in any way. Whenever we do this, right, this gets frustrating. Just when I debate people, we always go with, okay, find a source, right, and then it just becomes trying to discredit the source, right?
Well, sure, but
So
what I'm doing right now, I'm not just trying to discredit the New York Post. I'm trying to see, like, so I obviously I could obviously see that the New York Post is trying to substantiate the idea that these people were knowingly lying. So I'm trying to look for any evidence that these people were knowingly lying, and I'm just not seeing anything, right? So, like, when I see that these group of FBI officials said that this story has like the earmarks of Russian information, I feel like that's defensible. I feel like you could genuinely believe that at the time, right? The fact that Hunter Biden never denied the story, I don't think contradicts any of that.
Well, I mean, they're either lying or they're not very good at intelligence. They should change their names from intelligence professionals because they're not very good at it, right?
Well,
I mean,
it's my impression that were these people even like current intelligence?
So I think some were current and some were former. Yeah, it was here, let me see exactly what it says on it just a second. But I truly believe, unless I'm wrong, I think Blinken was one of the, I don't know if he was one of the organizers, or I mean, you know who Blinken is, right? Like Biden's
Generally, yeah.
Secretary of State.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let's see here.
So, like, I just don't think so. If we're trying to say that there was a conspiracy by the FBI to basically rig the because that's his tie back, it's like a conspiracy by the FBI to rig the election to cover up the story, right? I don't think it suffices to say that, well, these people were just wrong in their classification, that something looked like Russian misinformation. I don't think that satisfies the burden of proof here, right? I think the burden of proof is that there was some sort of conspiracy to change the outcome of the election. This just certainly is not that, especially when, again, this story is completely fucking unbelievable. I mean, I'm not saying that it didn't happen, but like on its face, when you hear that story, it just rings like bullshit. So it wouldn't shock me that former intelligence officials comes out and says, hey, this sounds like bullshit, because it does sound like bullshit.
Oh man, I think they knew exactly what they were doing.
Yeah, but we don't have any. We don't have any. So
that's just.
If this is the grounds that you're claiming election fraud, though, you need a little more than just like, I think.
Well,
I feel like we need something more substantial than that.
Well, okay, so if what I'm stating is that we have members of the deep state that are actively trying to swing the election for Biden. To me, that if that were true, I don't believe that's a fair and free election. Okay, so just for the sake of argument, I know you don't think it's true, but let's say that it is true. Let's say that they just completely think that they did what I think they did, which is just completely lie, and they knew it, right? Would that alter your opinion anyway?
It would alter my opinion, sure. I still don't think that this gives justification for an illegal attempt to throw out electors or whatever.
Okay. I'm just trying to. I mean, I guess I can read the article, but I mean,
well, I mean,
it doesn't. I mean,
so I read through bits and pieces of the article. It seems like most of the substantiation was that the story ended up being wrong, or ended up being right, which is fine. I can grant that. The fact that Hunter Biden never denied the story, which that's fine. That doesn't contradict anything. And that's kind of it, right? Like, I don't think that substantiates any sort of conspiracy.
Well, here you go. Here it is. In short, they peddled online disinformation to sway an election. Okay, so look, it's okay, man.
Well, you just need to prove a conspiracy,
don't-
right? Like being wrong. By the way, I just want to be clear. Also, that are you familiar with like the distinction between dis and misinformation?
Well, yeah, no,
So
you're right.
like
I know there is. So disinformation. Go ahead.
disinformation is like a
Disinformation is they're
conspiracy,
doing
like
it
you're
on
lying.
purpose.
Yeah, and misinformation is
They're
that you were
doing it
just
on
wrong
purpose.
on something. Yeah. So what I would argue is that
Oh,
these people were
so
just wrong, right? They weren't
go
lying.
ahead.
This wasn't a conspiracy. They weren't trying to change the outcome of the election. They were just
Can
wrong.
you hear me?
Yeah. My bad. It was
That's all
my
right.
whole internet cut out. I thought it was just my computer, but
Not a problem.
happens when you're living in bumfuck nowhere. Okay. So where we were
Yeah.
at.
So well, here.
So okay. So
Well, here's
the
the.
go ahead,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead. There you go.
I was just gonna say it's from what it's telling me here. They don't have any remorse about it. They're not even trying to like say they made a mistake or oh, okay. So do the officials, this is just from the article here, do the officials who tried to flip the 2020 election feel any regret for their actions? The Post reached out to those who signed the letter. Most would not answer the question. A few doubled down, including Clapper. No remorse, no shame, no apologies.
Well, also to be clear, so I'm reading the statements that they provide. So Hayden didn't respond. Clapper said, yes, I stand by the statement at the time. I think sounding such a cautionary note at the time was appropriate. So I think that's a fair statement, right? He had every reason to believe this at the time. He just happened to be wrong, right?
Well, but here they say he had no reason to believe it. So they could have just as easily said it was some other country because
sure,
they
but
had
I
no.
feel like I explained to you why I think it's reasonable to, or why I think a reasonable person would believe that it's Russia, right? Like Russia is there any country that tries to influence the U.S. elections more than Russia?
Well, what to what degree does I mean? What other countries would be involved in our politics? Certainly, Israel's involved in our politics. Right? I'm pro-Israel, by the way, so that's not a
Sure. I mean, there's also like the one
China.
story about China. Yeah, sure. But like,
Yeah.
my impression is that Russia is by far the biggest interest. And then on top of the fact that the Hunter Biden laptop stuff involves like Ukrainian corruption and shit, I feel like it's very, very believable that, or at least you could reasonably come to the conclusion. And by the way, keep in mind that the claim wasn't that Russia did do it. The claim was that this sounds like Russia did it, right? That's a fully defensible claim. What Russia has every interest in order to, do a claim like this or do a plot like this, and that Russia is like the biggest interferer in the U.S. elections. I feel like that's a reasonable statement at the time. No,
It just seems like again, man, and we can move on off this. I don't think we're going to get an agreement. I think they knew damn well what they were doing.
sure,
I
okay.
genuinely.
Yeah, I just don't think there's any indication of that. So like, and also the problem is, right, is that this is like this is very weak in my opinion in order to justify the actions of the Trump administration, right? Like, the fact that, by the way, none of this was like, this wasn't even really the claimed grounds by the Trump administration in order to decertify the election. It was like all of these conspiracy theories about like Dominion machines going to Venezuela and Venezuela stealing the votes from the adjudication machines or whatever. Like all of this shit was like blatantly made up. Donald Trump called it crazy in private, and he used this to try and like decertify electors and steal the 2020 election. I don't know. Like this just feels like post hoc justification.
So okay, so look, we can, if you want to get into suspicious, but it's like I'm watching the election. I remember this back in November 2020. I was watching the election. I was probably up to like 2 or 3 in the morning, right? And President Trump is up, right?
Yep.
He's up and like by what, like maybe 4 or 5%, whatever it is. And
Mhm.
then I'm like, okay, Trump's great. Trump won. I wake up a few hours later and nope, in every single situation, all this like.
There was an outage with my provider. That's what it was. So
Okay, can you hear me okay now?
I can now, but I had to end stream
Okay.
because it was really fucking up. But we're still good to go. Just
Oh,
just restart
man.
what you were talking about.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, we could get into, and I don't, we're not going to agree on it. I mean, we can talk about, you know, I was mentioning that he's up by about 5%, and then a few hours later, he's all of a sudden down everywhere by a few percent, which was very suspect to me.
Mhm.
And we can talk about, Dinesh D'Souza and his documentary, but I don't really think we're just not going to agree on it, but let's just say, what would your view of January 6th be if the election actually, this is actually something I struggle with. Okay.
Mhm.
What should the appropriate response be if the election actually was rigged, which I think it was, right? Should we, what should the appropriate, and where the courts just don't intervene, right? What would the appropriate reaction be? Just to let
Sure.
it go?
So I do wanna loop back around to the overtime ballot stuff in a second.
Sure.
But that, just to answer that question right off the rip, the answer is it is genuinely insurrection, right? Like, if you believe that the election is stolen from you, your democracy is being stolen from you, and there's no recourse that you can possibly get through non-peaceful means, you do an insurrection, right? That's kind of the whole foundation of the country. So if we were to presuppose the entire MAGA narrative where the Democrats and the judicial branch and all of the state legislators were all conspiring against Donald Trump in order to keep him out of office, even though he legitimately won, an insurrection in that case is probably justified. The problem
Okay.
is that we don't have any indication that any of this is true, right? Especially considering like the standard at which you would need to prove this, right? So the problem is that I talk about this a lot, and I hear the same like kind of 5 talking points reiterated all the time. But I feel like all of these things have been like pretty substantially dealt with, but for some reason this information just doesn't go out, right? Like, so in reference to like D'Souza, you acknowledge that he had to like walk back a lot of the major claims from 2000 Mules because one of the mules sued him for defamation, and that resulted in the publisher needing to write an apology letter to him, right?
I had heard there was, yeah. I mean, I guess I haven't looked at it too closely, but if I'll take your word for it that there were some concessions. Sure, if that's, but
Okay.
I just mean in general, do you, where you're hearing these stories of like, minivans pulling up in the middle of the night, you just think it's all BS?
Yes, because Donald Trump and his administration was very good at lying about all of this, taking this to the exact right people to get the most amount of publicity without having like any accountability for it, right? So like also in the example of Ruby Freeman, right, with the ballots being taken from under the table at State Farm Arena,
Georgia.
Yeah, we acknowledge that Rudy Giuliani literally admitted to lying about all of the material facts in that case, right? He said that he was lying about Ruby Freeman, he was lying about Shane Moss, he was lying about the ballot being pulled from under the table. But he just argued that it was his First Amendment right to do so, and he lost the defamation case in that as well.
Yeah, I haven't looked at it that closely, but I mean, they did. I mean, literally, don't you think that this is to some degree, though, like lawfare on the part of the Democrats, where they're actually going after the lawyers who represent it? Like, what?
Of course not. Of course not. So, like, but I want to establish this first, right? So, like, all of the times that the Trump administration came out and made a claim about election fraud, it was either immediately undermined by other Republicans, or they were sued for defamation and lost, or they were never able to provide any evidence beyond them just claiming it, right? Like, there's been no indication of any amount of outcome determinative fraud. In terms of like going after the lawyers pled guilty, right? Like, when you're being tried for an attempt to like subvert the Electoral Count Act, or putting like a pressure campaign on different electors, or a pressure campaign on the vice president, and you plead guilty to those charges, I don't know how you could claim it weaponization, right? Like, they willingly wrote apology letters to the state of Georgia for trying to interfere with their election.
Yeah, man, but you got to understand, like, the federal prosecution system is extremely relentless, right? I mean, what are they have like a approximately what, like a 98% conviction rate? I mean, basically,
Yes.
they just say, unless you deal with us, you're going to go to prison for like, however long, 20 years or whatever. It seems to me to be
But it's because they can get convictions. It's because like federal charges like that are usually only brought with like ample evidence, right? And there's ample evidence to get people like Kenneth Chesebro and Jenna Ellis and Sidney Powell and Rudy Giuliani and Donald Trump if he wasn't elected the president.
So you just think all of the lawyers were just completely, that they said they knew. You're saying that they knew this was complete bullshit, that Trump lost, and they were just lying about it. That's
Yes,
what you
and
believe?
unfortunately, a lot of them like openly admitted to it.
Well, I don't know. I mean, Sidney Powell, didn't she represent Flynn, General Flynn?
I'm not certain.
I'm trying to remember. I thought maybe I'm remembering. Maybe I'm confusing her with somebody else. But I just when we actually see this lawfare. I thought we saw it with Trump here in this last election. Okay, we won't, if we don't want to get off topic. We don't have
Well,
to.
just to be clear, like I don't know why we're saying lawfare in this case, right? Like we have emails from John Eastman to Rudy Giuliani saying, "I've decided I should be on the pardon list." Right? Like, why would you say that if you didn't think that you're engaging in illegal activity?
Well, I mean, we saw all the people Biden pardoned, right? So,
well, no, I'm asking, why would John Eastman ask to be on a pardon list if he didn't think he was doing illegal activity?
And probably because he knew the Democrats would come after him. That'd be my guess.
Come after him for what?
For trying to steal, for trying to make fraudulent claims about the election, for impropriety.
Yeah, that's justified. So if he's making illegal if he's like trying to spread disinformation to justify a plot to overturn electors in violation of the Electoral Count Act, that's illegal activity. So he probably asked to be on the pardon list because he was engaging in illegal activity to overturn the result of the election. No?
It doesn't seem odd. We didn't really talk about it. It doesn't seem odd to you that Trump is up in all these places and then all of a sudden a few hours later he's down? That doesn't seem weird to you at all?
So just out of curiosity, like it's been what, 6 years? Have you ever just like Googled why that happened?
I don't know. I thought they talked about the mail-in ballots, counting them later.
Yeah, it's overtime. It's the overtime ballots, right? So it takes longer to centralize mail-in ballots to one counting location. So whenever they were all centralized to the counting location, they just started all, counting the mail-in votes. So they got submitted last, and it's not a shocker that the majority of the mail-in ballots lean towards Democrats because the Republican nominee was constantly shitting on mail-in ballots and saying that they shouldn't be allowed, right?
I was just looking at, there's this fella named Joe Fried. I can send you a link to his and he's like an auditor, and he was just giving all these examples in places like Arizona and Nevada about how all the rules were loosened in terms of ID and signatures and all these things that were very, very suspect. So look, and I know we're not. I'm actually glad that I can't really. We're having a somewhat civil conversation, which I don't usually have with people on the left. So that is good.
Mm-hmm.
But we're not going to agree on this.
So I guess the problem is though is that like I'm asked. So this isn't isolated to you. This is isolated to the movement, right? The problem is that we're using this like, okay, the election was stolen, so this justifies the current president of the United States taking illegal action to steal the election by decertifying electors, and it justifies all of his supporters invading the Capitol, right? But when I push you on like any of the individual examples of like any amount of fraud, let alone outcome determinative fraud, it feels like none of this can be substantiated at all. But it's not like, have you ever heard of like the magic table problem?
No.
Where it's like an argument is supposed to be like a table, right? Where your conclusion is the tabletop and the legs are your premises, right? So like, I believe that killing somebody is bad because like the first leg of the table is robbing people of consent is wrong. The second leg of the table is that robbing people of consent is wrong for this reason. Like, and all of these legs of the table are supposed to hold up the conclusion that killing people is wrong, right? The problem is that it sounds like we're saying like Donald Trump is fit for office, even like in spite of January 6th, because the election was rigged, even though none of the evidence of outcome determinative fraud has ever panned out, even though he fell, in all of the courts. I'm like when you're giving me the claims of like, oh, well, the overtime ballots, and then I kick out that leg, and then you're like, oh, well, the Hunter Biden laptop, and then I kick out that leg, somehow your tabletop is still standing, even though there's no legs under it, right? That's
don't think
kind of the
I'm
problem.
not trying to be offensive, but I don't think you're kicking out the legs. I really don't. Where I, for example, with the 51 intelligence professionals, you're like, oh, they just made a mistake, dude. I mean, that's
Well,
not kicking out a leg, man.
there's no
They
indication
need to
otherwise, right? You're making the
need to
claim.
they really need to drop the name intelligence if they just did. I mean,
Well, no. Wait, hold on. If you're claiming like a conspiracy to try and steal the election, you need to substantiate that claim. It's not my job to disprove you. It's your job to prove it.
dude, there was no basis other than they said the story was odd. They could have picked.
I literally gave you the basis, and you didn't contradict my basis.
Dude.
You never contradicted the basis.
What was your basis
that Russia has explicit special interest in spreading a story like this, and the story was beyond belief.
Look, if you look at Matt Taibbi, he's the was he former Rolling Stones, or is he still with Rolling Stone magazine? I don't know. He talked about the 2016 Russian collusion. It's called a hoax for a reason, man.
It's called a hoax because you guys don't know what you're talking about. I'm sorry.
I mean, you're laughing when you say, do you really believe this? Do you really?
Have you ever? So do you know what the Internet Research Agency is?
No.
Yeah, that's why you think it's a hoax.
Internet Research Agency? I'm
yes.
not familiar with it.
Yeah, I know that you're not familiar with it. That's why conservatives believe that it's a hoax, is because they don't know any of the influence campaigns that Russia was running.
Dude, I told you that Russia and the U.S. have been interfering in
like, are you aware that George Papadopoulos was meeting with diplomats for Australia, and he was bragging about coordinating info drops with Russia?
Here's what I heard about him.
Are you aware that like Roger Stone was coordinating with the WikiLeaks guy in order to drop information?
Well, Assange, he was a hero of the left until now he goes the other way and he's a villain? Is that look, as far as Papadopoulos goes, my understanding of this was like he was set up by the feds for like some woman, like some attractive FBI officer was sent to kind of like get information from him or try and set him up or some shit. I don't believe any of it, man.
After we got the information from the Australian diplomat, right? So this is why you think it's a hoax, is because you don't know anything about it.
Dude, do you? I think General Flynn was a patriot. Are you telling me he was bad too?
I'm not making a comment about General Flynn. I'm saying that the reason that you think that the Russian collusion stuff was a hoax is because you don't know anything about it. The reason that you think the election was stolen is because you don't know anything about it. But for some reason, you're using the justification that the election was stolen to justify Donald Trump actually trying to steal the election by violating the Electoral Count Act.
Dude, did you see? The Mueller report was built up for like 2 or 3 years during Trump's first term as like some dude. Mueller to me seemed to be in another dimension. He didn't seem to be all there, man. Or am I wrong about that too?
Do you even tell me like what the 2 parts of the Mueller report? What were the findings?
They didn't find much, man.
Like what were the conclusions? What were the conclusions?
I know the claims were that like Trump was like a fucking Russian agent. And that the election was stolen from Hillary. No?
Of the Mueller report? No.
The Steele dossier?
The Steele dossier was not a part of the Mueller investigation.
That was how they launched the Crossfire Hurricane operation.
That's not true. Right? No.
No?
No, Crossfire Hurricane was launched before. No, Crossfire Hurricane was launched before the FBI had the Steele dossier.
Dude, and this, look, I mean, to me, what happened...
Do you acknowledge that fact? Do you acknowledge that it's impossible for the FBI to launch Crossfire Hurricane because of the Steele dossier when they launched the investigation before they had the Steele dossier?
Wasn't the Steele dossier the basis for them getting their FISA warrants?
It was the basis for the FISA warrants. It was not the basis for the launch of the investigation, correct?
Well, but the Crossfire Hurricane.
That's a yes or no question.
No, I'm just trying to establish Crossfire Hurricane was the name.
I asked you a question, right? So the Steele dossier was not the predication for Crossfire Hurricane, correct or incorrect?
I don't know.
It was not. And the reason is because the predicate for Crossfire Hurricane was George Papadopoulos bragging to an Australian diplomat about coordinating info drops with Russia. That was the justification for opening Crossfire Hurricane. Now, was there impropriety with the FISA warrants? Yeah, sure. But there's nothing even came from it. So I don't know how you could use this to justify, again, Donald Trump engaging in a plot to steal the election in 2020.
Dude, my understanding of this, and this was coming out. Do you know who Matt Taibbi is? Let me pull him up here. Hang on a second.
Sure, pull him
Let
up.
me pull up Taibbi because he really looked into this with the. I mean, it was even acknowledged by a lot of people on the left that the Mueller report was basically there wasn't much there.
Yeah, because that's why I was asking you for this, because you just have like a warped understanding of what it even was. Like the Mueller report, the two conclusions from the Mueller report is that we do not have evidence that the Trump administration colluded with Russia as a legal term, but the Trump administration was obstructing the fuck out of every investigation of them. Right. So the fact that you thought the Mueller report found that the election was stolen from Hillary Clinton is just like I don't even know why we're having this conversation.
No,
why do you have in-depth knowledge about the FISA warrants if you don't even know what the conclusion of the Mueller report was?
I'm just telling you the conclusion of the Mueller report was there was not very much there.
You didn't even know didn't know the conclusion.
Dude, was Trump a Russian asset?
No.
Okay, there you go.
What does that prove?
Just telling you the narrative that went on of why Hillary lost and that why Trump was this shit went on for years, man. I don't. Hang on, let me get Taibbi here just a second. Okay, Matt Taibbi breaks down what discarded reject. Okay, here we go. Matt Taibbi breaks down what discarded, rejected pieces of non-information fueled Steele dossier.
Nobody's contesting that the Steele dossier was a bad document.
Yeah, but wasn't it like come up with from Hillary's campaign?
It was so basically Christopher Steele was an opposition researcher who was hired by Perkins Coie, or maybe it was even a degree of separation. I don't remember if Perkins Coie or Fusion GPS was the second or third step. They're interchangeable. So, but what I think it was, so Perkins Coie hired Fusion GPS, who hired Christopher Steele, and the DNC hired Perkins Coie. Right? This wasn't a commission by the Hillary campaign. It was a commission by Fusion GPS, who was commissioned by Perkins Coie, who was commissioned by the DNC.
Let me just read this to you, okay? This is on MSN. I can put it in the chat if you want. Journalist
Please
Matt
do.
Taibbi Yeah, Matt. Okay, let me get it. Let me get it on my other one here. I'm pulling it up now.
Mm-hmm.
It is interesting to me, like how we live on different fucking planets.
I agree.
We do. It's interesting. But here, hang on. I'm still with you. I'm just pulling it up.
Yep. Somehow I'm still with you too. Despite my ISP as well.
Are you having connection problems?
I live in the middle of nowhere, so the internet's always spotty.
Gotcha. Okay, I'll put it in here now. There it is. You get it?
Yep.
Former President Barack Obama and his national security team manufactured and politicized intelligence following President Donald Trump's 2016 victory.
It's just a claim.
The intelligence communities. Okay. Dude, this guy's pretty. So you just don't think this dude is credible, or?
No, I think that the Republican Party has an interest in lying about shit that's already been litigated. I know that most of the people who are drawing conclusions off of the Tulsi Gabbard annex were just blatantly lying about the findings.
Okay.
We find out that what's been released today is the clear conclusion that Putin, quote unquote, aspired to help Trump, for whom he had a clear preference, was based on 4 pieces of evidence, one of which was on the Steele dossier. This is just not true.
We see this is what I'm talking about, man. This is the problem we get into, right? I mean, I try and offer supporting evidence.
I've read the problem is that you're citing news articles, but I've read the underlying source material here. I've read what's in the Tulsi Annex, right? Like the idea is that, so what he's referencing is an ICA, that's an Intelligence Committee report, or an Intelligence Committee assessment, and they give those to the president, and that's basically a very in-depth like an in-depth research document about like what is happening with a particular thing, right? So what they're saying is that because the annex of the ICA had the Steele dossier in it, that means that they were that like the Steele dossier was the thing that built the conclusions of the ICA. But like we could tell by like all of the people who worked on the ICA explicitly said that the Steele dossier had a giant fucking warning on it saying uncorroborated information, do not use. None of them said that the Steele dossier informed any of the decisions in the ICA.
Okay, but if what you said is the case, then why would they base that on a FISA warrant?
The FISA warrant was a different problem.
Well,
the FISA warrant in the ICA, the FISA warrant was like fucking 5 people within the FBI without the knowledge of the FBI higher ups. The ICA was like the higher ups of the intelligence committees. These are 2 different standards. Right, and there was impropriety with the FISA warrants. I'll grant that, but again, that doesn't really say anything other than the fact that like Kevin Kleinsmith and fucking Peter Strzok or whatever were in the wrong for using poor intelligence to justify a FISA warrant. But like, the FISA warrant didn't even result in anything. Like Carter Page, I don't even think Carter Page got indicted.
Look, we hear all the time about how bad Nixon was because of Watergate. To me, this made Watergate look like nothing much compared to what Obama did. But I know you're going to disagree.
Obama didn't even do anything. He didn't even do anything inappropriate here.
He didn't know. You're telling me he didn't greenlight this? He didn't know.
Greenlight what? Greenlight what?
Greenlight the surveillance on Trump and his campaign.
Obama does not sign off on FISA warrants. No.
You don't think he knew about it?
No.
You don't think he knew anything about this? That the
Obama
FBI
does not look at. Obama does not monitor every FISA warrant that the FBI applies for.
Dude, I'm not. Are you telling me
that's just not how the process works?
You're telling me that you think that Obama had no knowledge of the FBI launching an investigation into the Trump campaign?
He obviously had knowledge of the investigation. The investigation was appropriate.
Okay. Well, maybe Nixon's people thought the investigation was appropriate.
So, John, I'm going to ask you. So let's say that you have a friendly government. Their diplomat comes to you and says, hey, this person associated with this campaign is talking about coordinating leaks with the Russian government about an opposition candidate. Do you think the FBI should investigate that?
I don't.
You don't know?
We're just never, like I said, man, we're living
I understand we're living on a different reality, but I want you to demonstrate that. Do you think that's a yes or a no? When a foreign government, like a friendly foreign government, comes to the FBI and says, hey, I heard somebody associated with this campaign talking about leaking information about the opposition campaign with Russia from the Russian state government. Do you think the FBI should investigate that or no?
I think the FBI should talk to the Trump campaign.
Do you think they should open an investigation? Yes or no?
I don't. I think they should first, maybe, perhaps, but the very
maybe
first thing
perhaps,
dude. If you don't think there's a problem that the party in power is launching investigations into the opposition candidate, dude, this is
like Donald Trump is investigating Obama right now.
Well, probably for doing shit like this.
You think that's a problem?
Well, again, if it's reactionary.
Not when we do it. LOL. Okay.
Well, dude, but this is the whole point, man. The left, they tried to do everything they possibly could to put Trump in prison, to bankrupt him.
Yes, it's true, because when you commit a crime, you should be tried for that crime. In the same way that, like, we agreed to talk about this topic, for some reason we're talking about everything aside from it. You agree that Donald Trump was trying to break the law on January 6th? Do you agree with that?
I don't think so. I think he genuinely believed that the election was rigged, and I agree with him.
That doesn't matter. Do you think that he was trying to pressure the vice president? Do you think he was trying to pressure the vice president to violate the Electoral Count Act?
It doesn't matter.
Correct. It doesn't matter insofar as his culpability to breaking the law. Do you think that he was trying to pressure the vice president to violate the Electoral Count Act?
Well, probably, because he thought it was rigged.
So he was trying to break the law on January 6th, correct?
But if it was rigged, he would not be breaking the law.
How is that?
Look, you actually agree. You actually, correct me if I'm wrong.
I made an ethical. I made a moral judgment. I didn't make a legal judgment. Donald Trump. I just want to I want to establish a shared reality, because we can't concede to this, and I don't know what we'd ever concede to. Donald Trump was trying to violate the law on January 6th, correct?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think that I agree with him. I think the election was rigged for all the reasons I gave you.
If I kill somebody because I think they're an asshole, that doesn't give me legal justification to do it. In the same way where if I try to steal the election because I think there was impropriety, even though none of the courts found it, and none of my principal officers found it, and none of the state investigators found it, that doesn't give me justification. So I'm going to ask you again, his intention does not matter. He was trying to violate the Electoral Count Act. No?
Dude, if I keep on saying the same thing, if it was a fraudulent election, he would not be breaking the law.
How does that follow?
You actually didn't you agree with? Didn't you? I don't even really know what my position is. I didn't state it, but did you? I said to you, say that it was rigged, that it was stolen, that it was in, and then you said yeah, that is insurrection, that is justified. Isn't that?
I said it would be justified. I didn't say it'd be legal.
Justified versus legal?
Yeah, sometimes it's justified to violate the law.
Okay, man. All right.
Do you not agree with that?
Well, justification should be in cohesion with legal.
I agree it should be, but it's not always, right? So I just want to establish that we could argue about whether or not it was justified, but Donald Trump was 1,000,000% trying to violate the law on January 6th.
But again, if the election was fraudulent, would he be violating the law?
Yes.
Interesting. So even though the election was not legitimate, not fair and free, and he's saying I don't accept this, you still think he would be breaking the law?
If he said if he said that the vice president should throw out electors, then yes, that is a violation of the law, regardless of if it was stolen or not.
Look,
because he's asking the vice president to violate the electoral counting procedure.
Look, I said this, it's something I actually struggle with, right? In terms of like J6, because, well, I look at 1960 and I look at 2000, and in both cases, Nixon and Gore, they just said, look, we can't, I think they thought this would, really cause disunity and problems with the country. They're just going to accept the way it played out. But what I'm asking you is, I especially think now, since we're in such hyper-partisan times, I actually don't know the answer. I don't know if that, because here, look, I'll throw this back to you in this way. Like, say in the future, let's say that it doesn't go the way for the left, right? Or let's just say that in the future, somebody says, you know what? We're just not going to, we don't care what the election results are. We're just going to stay in power. What would be the appropriate response in that situation?
Insurrection.
What do you think? So you do agree with it?
Yeah, it doesn't mean it'd be legal, but yeah, it'd be an insurrection. But the problem is that you would need to substantiate the fact that Joe Biden did not win the 2020 election, which you have not done. The Republicans have never done. That's the problem. But I just want to stick on this real quick. So when Donald Trump called his deputy attorney general, Richard Donahue, and he told them, just say the election was corrupt and leave the rest to me and the Republican congressman, after being told that the election wasn't stolen, what do you think he meant by that?
I don't know. I mean, I guess I just keep going back to, I don't mean to be a parrot here, but I just keep saying he acted in a manner and such that he genuinely believes, and I agree with him, that he was cheated, that it was stolen.
He did not act in a manner that was consistent with that.
But you're telling me that you yourself say that insurrection is justified if it is in fact the case that the election is not fair and free, right?
Correct.
Interesting. Well,
Interesting.
it sounds like, I mean, you understand that these are that there's going to, dude, it's kind of like, think about all the misinformation and, okay, I won't pivot. I was going to tell you about, it's what I'm talking about here with the problems of our sources. I give you and it doesn't just, I'm not just saying you do, it goes both ways, right? But like the game becomes, you ask for a source, I give you a source, then you just say, okay, yeah, this is BS.
Well, because the question is like, no, the problem is like what you're using that source to substantiate. So if I say that like my claim is that bananas are the best fruit in the world, right? And then I link you something that says like bananas are high in potassium or whatever. Well, that doesn't really substantiate that they're the best in the world, right? Like if I'm asking you for evidence of like a conspiracy by the FBI and you send me a thing saying that the FBI was wrong, that doesn't substantiate a conspiracy, right?
Dude, I'm trying to give, I laid out my case for it. I talked about the 51 intelligence professionals. I talked about that he's up by about 5%. Then all of a sudden he's down. It's fishy, man. I don't buy it.
Well,
look, I could be wrong.
I feel like we've litigated that about as much as we can.
Yeah, I agree with you. Okay. And look, I just, and we can end it here pretty quick, but I would just say that J6, I think of it more as something in the realm of like a protest, maybe a riot, maybe trespassing. I don't see it as nobody was, and I didn't really get an answer to this question last night with Ashley Babbitt. Do you think that the way she was killed, do you think that was justified? I don't.
Yes.
You do?
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Because the standard by which an officer can kill somebody is if they're posing a threat to the public or if a reasonable officer would believe that their life is in danger, right? So I feel like it's pretty clear that Ashley Babbitt, a part of a group of Trump supporters in the Capitol who are like chanting to hang Mike Pence, who are breaking into the congressional chambers to get to Congress people, that they're posing a threat to public safety, right? And her climbing through that window, in order to get to Congress people, that's a threat to public safety. Right, like I think after the ample warnings to turn around, after him pointing the gun at her, after like it being clearly substantiated that she's posing a threat to public safety, I think it was a justified shoot.
Okay, but she was unarmed, right?
No, she had a pocket knife.
A pocket knife.
Yes.
Okay, so did it remain in her? This is last night was the first I heard of that, by the way. Did it remain in her pocket?
I don't think she brandished it. No.
Okay, so the police officer did not know that.
I don't know if the police officer knew it or not. What the police officer did know is that there was probably about 200 people on the other side of that door that were going to follow her right through that window if she got through.
So you think it would be justified if the police officer just started opening fire on everybody?
No.
Or no? No. Why her?
Because she was warned multiple times and she was posing a threat to public safety. She was trying to get into the congressional chambers around the same time that the Congress people were being evacuated.
Kind of like Renee Good was warned multiple times to leave.
Well, no, because that's a separate standard, right? The officer was not using threat to public safety in order to kill Renee Good. He was using self-defense. The self-defense claim there is like laughably bad.
So are you saying that Ashley Babbitt? See, I don't. So is it the police officer that's just claiming that they were shouting to leave? That he was shouting for her to leave, or what?
I'm pretty sure you could hear it on the tape.
Okay, yeah, I'd have to look at it. All I know is for one thing, it's a woman, and for a second thing, she
Okay.
she didn't have a gun. You're telling me she had a pocket knife that remained in her pocket. I don't think that was justified. Because well, I mean, what? Okay, she was trespassing, or you're saying she was trying to, you know,
She was trying to break through the door in order to get to where the Congress people were.
like I don't know if you can. I don't think you can prove she was going to attack Congress people. Can you? Are you making that claim?
Well, there's a violent mob going through the Capitol, and she is trying to break through a door's window in order to get to the congressional chambers. It seems like she has no other incentive other than that.
Look,
In the same way that if somebody's breaking through my house window and I'm in the living room, right? Like I have reasonable suspicion to think that she is there with violent aims, right?
Okay, that's different in somebody's house. That's not that's.
Well, I mean, she's trying to enter the congressional chamber. She's breaking a window to do it while a cop is pointing a gun at her. Why do you think she's doing that?
Well, isn't that trespassing?
I mean, yes, among other things. Yeah.
I mean, the government building is.
It's also insurrection, probably. Yeah.
But it's different than somebody's home, don't you think?
Of course, it's different than somebody's home, but I'm drawing an analogy here, right? I'm saying that whenever somebody is going through violent action to get into a place that they're not supposed to be, in order to get to a particular person or a particular group of people, I think their intention is fairly easy to draw in that case, right? So like if she was since she was breaking through the window of the door with a mob of people behind her trying to get into the congressional chambers where the rioters had every reason to believe Congress people were, while a Capitol police officer was pointing a gun at her, telling her to turn around. Like what do you think her intentions were?
I'd have to go back, and I mean, I want to see if there was other testimony just besides the police officer. You know, I'm not, so I'd have to look just on the surface of it. To shoot an unarmed woman like that, I think I do not think
unarmed, but that's fine.
Well, okay, a pocket knife that he didn't know existed. Well, okay. Well, look, if you want real briefly, I can tell you other reasons I think the left is crazy, or we can just leave it here. We've actually had a pretty civil conversation. So
yeah, listen, I gotta take a break, but if you want to set something up in the future, we could even do like something moderated if you wanted to.
All right, man. Well, all right. You have a nice day, okay?
All right, love you, buddy.
Take care now.
Okay.
Do, do, do.